Good afternoon, all. Can you hear me, Pute? Right. Good afternoon. Can you tell me that where did we stop the last day? I think we have marked. Where did we? So, did we finish the islands and ocean? I think we have complete, ne? Islands ටික හරිනේ? Yes. So, මෙන්න මේවා these are the important points. මෙන්න මේවා ටික ඕනේ for the MCQs. The continental shelf. Continental shelf. What is the continental shelf? Right? Continental shelf means, wait, continental shelf means you can see, wait, I need to take a good picture for you to show. Right, you can see the shallow sea stripe. The shallow sea stripe, right? This area, actually this is the shallow sea stripe. Pute, ඒක ගැඹුරු නෑ, shallow. ඔයාට ඇවිදගෙන යන්න පුළුවන්. Shallow sea stripe. Straight towards the ocean. මේ මුහුද පැත්තට ඇවිල්ලා තියෙන මේ ගොඩබිම from land to ocean, straight towards this, right? Known as continental boundary. ඇත්තටම කියනවා මේක තමයි boundary එක in between the continent and ocean. You can see the slope start from here. This slope මෙතනින් තමයි පටන් ගන්න. That is the continental shelf. Shallow area towards the ocean is known as continental shelf. මෙන්න මේක තමයි continental shelf කියලා කියන්නේ. I think diagram is in your book also. හරි. එතකොට continental shelf is this. A shelf එකක් අම්බුනාම after we meet the shelf, you can see the continental slope. මෙතෙන්ට එනකන් ඇවිදගෙන ආවට if you come continues you are working towards the ocean ඉවර තමයි. ගිහින් මුහුදු පතුලම බල බල ඉන්න පුළුවන් මෙතෙන්ින් මෙහාට ගියොත්. එහෙම යන්න බෑ. හරි? ඉතින් නවතර මතක තියාගන්න දැන් ඔය පිරිමි ළමයිට එහෙම හැදෙනවනේ ලෙඩක් 11 12 වසරට යනකොට ඒ මුහුදේ නාන්න පොඩි ජොලියක් දාන්න එහෙම යනවා. ගිහින් මේකේ ඉන්න පුළුවන්. මෙතනින් මෙහාට ගිය ගමන් සදාකාලික මුහුදු පතුල බල බල ඉන්න තමයි වෙන්නේ. මොකද මේක මෙන්න ස්ලොප් යන්නේ, right? මේ මුහුද මෙහෙම අපි ඉන්නේ මෙතන. if you consider in Sri Lanka like this පුතේ. හරි? ඒක තමයි භයානකම දේ. ලංකාව තියෙන්නේ කොහොමද දන්නවද? ලංකාවේ continental shelf. If I draw this, right? Our continental shelf like this. හරි? නිකන් අපි ඔය ලොකු කතා කරාට අපි ඉන්නේ බෝතලයක් උඩ වගේ. This is the normal land. It goes like this. Every part එන්න වැඩි. Right? We live in the island. So what is the island? It's a small part arose from the ocean. මේ මුහුද වටේට. හරි මේක දන්නේ නැතුව යනවා නාන්ද මුහුදේ. මේ මුහුද මං කීවේ here the continental shelf. This is the slope. That is the difference between that. This is the shallow area. ගැඹුරු නැති area එක. Shallow area. මේක ගැඹුරු නෑ. ඔයාට යන්න පුළුවන්. ඔක්කොම activities we done on this continental shelf, but not here because of the slope. Slope එකේදී ඔයාව මෙහෙම ඇදලා ගන්නවා. පහළට ඇදලා ගන්නවා. ඔයා කොච්චර how much you did your effort, you can't come up. ඔයාට එන්න බෑ. ඒ wave එකේ ස්ට්‍රෙන්ත් එක වැඩි වෙනවා ස්ලොප් එකට යන්න යන්න. ඒතකොට ඔයා මෙහෙම ඇදිලා යනවා. මේ බබරයක් වගේ ඇදිලා යනවා. ගිහිල්ලා එකපාරක් බලන් ආසයි නම් අය එන්න වෙන්නේ. Self is not like that. You can stay there and you can do your all the picnic or මොකක් හරි වීරව වෙන්න යන්න එපා. මූද නාන්න ගිහින් වීරව වෙන්න ඕනේ ආසාවට නාන්න self එක ඉන්නවා. මෙහෙට යන්නේ වීරයෝ ටික. නොයන ගමන් ගිහිල්ලා ඉන්න පුළුවන්. න හරි දෙයක් මතක තියන්න අපි යන්නේ අපි ආසාවටවත් මූද නාන්න යන්නේ. ඇයි? අපි දන්නවා මේක. අපිට සාහිය නැහැ. රලක් නැහැ waves එක. We can't fight with the waves. සමහරව හිතනවා පොඩ්ඩක් නේද? කරදඬු උස්ම හතරට පුළුවන් කියලා බෑ කාටවත් බෑ. මෙහෙම යනවා ඇදිලා. ඒක මතක තියාගන්න. That is called the continental shelf. Right? පුතේ මේක ඔයාගේ පොතේ තියෙන ඩයග්‍රෑම් එක තමයි අඳ ගන්න ඕනේ. but මම පෙන්නන්න අපේ ඩයග්‍රෑම් එක හොඳයි. Write the topic continental shelf and slope. Continental shelf and slope. Both, shelf and slope. Hope you understood that what is the difference between the shelf and slope, right? Shelf and slope. හරියට අඳ ගන්න. පටලලා දෙක පටලලා ලියන්න එපා විභාගෙදී. When you draw this putte, you can draw the coastal mountains, you can draw the shelf and slope. The brown color refers to the land area, brown colors, and blue colors refers to the ocean areas. Draw very clearly shelf and slope both. This shelf and slope located together. If there is a shelf, on the same way, slope is created. Once you finish, raise your hand. පුතේ ඉවර නම් විතරක් hand raise hand කරන්න. බබා බබා ඕකේ බැටරි බහි දෙන්න අපි යනකොට ඕක උනේ දෙන්න කීයක් තියෙනවද? Right? Right. Then, Pute, you have to write this definition. The shallow area stripe, down of it, right? The shallow area stripe the shallow area stripe that stretches, that stretches, that stretches the shallow sea stripe that stretches toward the ocean, towards the ocean, towards the ocean from the continental boundary. Right? The shallow sea stripe that stretches toward the ocean from the continental boundary. That is continental shelf. Next, continental slope. ඊළඟ එක ලියා ගන්න ඔකටම පහලින් continental slope. මේ දෙක හරියට තියාගන්න. Continental slope. For that right, continental slope, the edge of the continental shelf, the edge of the continental shelf the edge of the continental shelf slopes, slopes. Shelf slopes abruptly, abruptly. Word is in there, abruptly towards the ocean. එජ් එකේ ඉඳලා යන එක. හරි? Here I want to give you the other definition for the Apeda Makara Mantana island, but I didn't give the definition. Island means Pute, a small area. Why I am giving this definition for the MCQs? These will come. A small land area. A small land area surrounded by water. Surrounded by water. That is an island. So last day we have marked those islands, right? You can remember the especially island located in the continental shelf of Asia, Borneo, Java, Sumatra. Mostly islands are located close to the continents පුතේ. Islands continents වලින් ඈතට යන්නේ නැහැ. දැන් අපි ආසියානු මහද්වීපයේ අයිනේ ඉන්නේ. ඒ වගේ ෂෙල්ෆ් එකේ ඉන්නේ. මොකද අපි ඈතට යන්නේ නැහැ ගැලවිලා අරකෙම කෑල්ලක් හින්දා. හරි. එතකොට ආසියාව වටේ තියෙන ටික you can imagine what are the islands around the Asia, Borneo, Java, Sumatra and Sri Lanka. So island located in the continental shelf of Australia, Papua New Guinea and Tasmania. Papua New Guinea and Tasmania. The island located in the shelf of Africa, Madagascar. Very easy. Why I express these things? මේ වගේ MCQ හැදෙනවා. Only from the textbook, right? When observing a world map of the globe, you would be able to identify islands located in central region of the oceans too. The islands of Hawaii and Iceland, which were created as a result of volcanic activity that occurred in the deep ocean, are example for that. Sometimes, right? Sometimes islands are island were created due to volcanic activity. I won't go for the small video. මම මේක පෙන්නලා ඉන්න. මේක පොඩක් ඔළුවේ තියාගන්න. Like Iceland, Hawaiian Island, Iceland මේ වගේ ඒවා ක්‍රියේට් වුණේ පුතේ volcanic activity එක නිසා. මේක චුට්ටක් බලන්න. කොහොමද ඒක වෙන්නේ කියලා.
Did you know that islands are actually volcanoes that took millions of years to form? A lot of heat, time, and incredibly high temperatures are just some of the things needed to form an island. But do you know exactly how they're created? Today, we're going to discover this incredible natural process that has given us treasures like the amazing island of Hawaii or the Galapagos Islands. But before we dive in, please consider giving this video a like. It helps to make videos like this possible. Let's get started. First, we need to understand that an undersea volcano begins its life in the depths of the ocean, where the pressure is so intense that even hot magma has trouble rising. These volcanoes form when tectonic plates, massive blocks of the Earth's crust floating on the mantle, begin to separate or collide. As these plates move, they create cracks in the ocean floor, through which magma, a mixture of molten rock and gases, can escape. The process is slow but steady. The magma cools rapidly when it comes into contact with water and solidifies into a new layer of rock that begins to accumulate over time, forming a platform. For a submarine volcano to start growing and eventually become an island, an impressive amount of lava is required. This magma doesn't erupt all at once, but in intermittent eruptions over thousands or even millions of years. The lava builds up layer by layer, slowly forming an underwater mountain that could be several kilometers high before it even reaches the surface. Interestingly, these underwater mountains are often taller than any mountain on land before their peaks even see the light of day. The movement of tectonic plates is fundamental to this process. Not only do they create the cracks through which magma can rise, but they can also move the entire undersea mountain as they shift. This means that a submarine volcano could be born in one place but end up as an island in another, after being slowly dragged along by the movement of the plates. This process, known as tectonic drift, explains the formation of island chains, such as those in Hawaii, where each island represents a different point of volcanic activity over time. To better understand the scale of these submarine volcanoes, we can compare them to well-known structures. Imagine that the volcano is 2 miles below the surface of the ocean, which is about 2 miles deep. That's almost 3 times the height of the Empire State Building, or more than twice the height of the Burj Khalifa, the world's tallest building. As a submarine volcano approaches the ocean's surface, its behavior changes dramatically. In the deep ocean, where water pressure is immense, eruptions are slower and more controlled. However, when the volcano reaches about 200 meters below the surface, the pressure drops dramatically, and the eruptions become much more explosive. At this point, each eruption can release up to 1.5 million tons of magma in a single event, enough to fill 600 Olympic-sized swimming pools. This increase in the intensity of the explosions also turns the surrounding water into a yellowish-green color due to the release of sulfuric gases, creating a hostile environment for marine life. Can you imagine the smell? Yeah, it's very toxic. When erupting magma comes into contact with cold ocean water, a phenomenon known as hydrovolcanism occurs. The temperature difference between the magma, which can exceed 1,200 degrees Celsius, and the water, which is about 4 degrees at these depths, triggers violent explosions. These explosions produce large amounts of steam, which in turn ejects fragments of volcanic rock and ash into the water, creating a dense and murky cloud. This process not only affects visibility in the marine environment, but can also harm many aquatic species due to sudden changes in water temperature and acidity. In addition, these eruptions can create shock waves that travel through the water, affecting areas miles away from the eruption site. When the volcano finally breaks through the ocean's surface, the process of creating a new island begins. This is a crucial moment, as the lava, cooled by contact with the air, begins to solidify and accumulate, creating new land. But the process is not without its challenges. The young island faces a constant barrage of waves that can erode its newly formed structure. In many cases, the island may be submerged several times before a sufficiently solid base is established. A real-life example is G.C.E. Island, which formed off the coast of Iceland in 1963. In its early days, G.C.E. was battered by violent storms that eroded much of its structure, but eventually the island managed to survive, and today it remains a natural laboratory for the study of ecological colonization. The story of G.C.E. shows how an island can survive the challenges of the ocean and become a permanent feature of the landscape. When a new island emerges from the ocean, it immediately faces its first and most relentless enemy: the sea. Waves, driven by wind and tide, relentlessly attack the base and top of the newly formed island, eroding its structure. Waves, which can reach heights of up to 30 meters during heavy storms, pound the island with a force that can exceed 6,000 pounds per square foot. This constant bombardment of salt water and kinetic energy wears away the volcanic rock, causing large portions of the island to collapse back into the ocean. History has shown that many young islands are literally swept away by the waves before they can become permanently established. However, not all islands meet this fate. The survival of an island depends on several key factors. The composition of the volcanic material is crucial. Lava that cools quickly and becomes dense rock is much more resistant to erosion than more porous and fragile materials. The topography of the island is also important. An island with gentle slopes is less likely to crumble under wave pressure than one with steep walls and cliffs. Finally, ongoing volcanic activity can help an island resist the onslaught of the sea, as new eruptions can add material and strengthen the island's structure. There's examples of both destroyed and surviving islands. One of the most famous islands to collapse was Anak Krakatoa in Indonesia, which partially collapsed in 2018 due to a combination of volcanic eruptions and powerful waves, causing a devastating tsunami. On the other hand, islands like Hawaii have stood the test of time for millions of years, thanks in part to ongoing volcanic activity that strengthens their structure and protects them from ocean erosion. These cases remind us that nature is very unpredictable, and that an island's survival depends on a complex mix of factors. Once an island survives the initial battle against the sea, the fascinating process of colonization begins. The first inhabitants are usually bacteria and algae that cling to volcanic rock, starting a biological cycle that eventually leads to greater biodiversity. Then, seeds carried by the wind or birds begin to sprout, giving rise to the first plants. As the vegetation becomes established, animals such as insects and birds arrive, creating a new ecosystem. The initially barren and desolate volcanic landscape begins to transform into a thriving habitat full of life. However, human impact also plays a significant role in the evolution of these new islands. In some cases, humans have intervened to preserve these fragile ecosystems, such as G.C.E. in Iceland, which has been declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site. In other cases, the exploitation of natural resources has significantly altered the landscape and biodiversity. Human influence can either accelerate or inhibit the natural development of these islands, highlighting the importance of conservation and sustainable management. The future of newly formed islands is heavily influenced by climate change. As the planet warms, sea levels rise, which could threaten fledgling islands. Larger waves and more intense storms can erode and wear away these islands before they have a chance to stabilize. Imagine land that's just beginning to emerge from the water facing a sea that is hitting with much greater force. Islands that are just beginning to form may be the first to disappear if they can't adapt to these new challenges. For a newly formed island to become a permanent part of the map, certain conditions have to be met. First, it must have a solid lava base that won't wear away easily. It's also beneficial for the island to have a shape that helps protect it from waves and storms. Vegetation also plays an important role, as plants can help stabilize the soil and prevent erosion. In addition, human intervention can make a difference. Efforts to protect and preserve islands can help ensure their longevity. In the future, certain regions of the world may see the formation of new islands due to volcanic activity. Areas like the Pacific Ring of Fire, for example, which includes volcanic zones in Indonesia and Japan, are places where new islands could form. There's also potential in the Atlantic and Indian Oceans. These regions are like pressure cookers that could eventually release new land into the sea. Can you imagine a brand new, unknown island rising to the surface soon? What do you think it would look like? Let us know in the comments. See you in the next video.
Hi, it's Doug. Do any of you
That is how island is formed, right? Um, there are two activities දෙකක් තියෙනවා මේ දෙක කරන්න අරකේ 10 islands වල name ලිව්වොත් ඇති mark කරන්න ඕනේ නැහැ you know to mark last day අපි mark කරානේ මට ටග් ගාලා activities දෙක කරන්න පුතේ hope you all have a textbook හැමෝටම textbook එකක් තියෙනවනේ දැන් මම group එකට දාන්න වෙයිද තියෙනවනේ page number 18. Page number 18. Activity 1 and 2. Start to do. Those who join now, Pute, we have discussed the part of the lesson, right? And I have given activities to do on page number 18. Activity 1 and 2. Yes? Admin? No, Petio. Grade 7 class was finished. Okay. පුතේ write the name of the activity මේ islands no need to mark මොකද already we have mark නේ. Yes, no need to mark, write the name, that's enough. කැඩුනොත් හදන්න බෑ. පුතේ soon finish. Activity දෙකයි මම කරන්න කිව්වේ 1 and 2 only. Next we have to discuss about the oceans. අද අපි ocean and seas කරන්නත් ඕනේ. මම කරන්න. Right. So, what is a continental shelf? Sachil, can you answer Pute? What is continental shelf? What did you write? Yes? Sound එක එන්නේ නෑනේ පැටියෝ. Who is that? Kisara, did you finish?
Yes, sir.
What is continental shelf? What did you write?
The shallow, gently sloping part of the continent that is underwater.
Good. So, Anjali, what is the continental slope?
The continental shelf slopes upwardly towards the ocean.
Sanuli, tell me the 10 different names of the islands. No? Lakindu? Can you?
Greenland, Madagascar, Borneo, Yukon, Sumatra, Honshu, Great Britain, Iceland, Cuba, Java.
Okay. Who is that? Tanuri, can you tell me the island close to the Asia? Puluwand. Right. Very good. Right. So next we are going to discuss about the oceans and seas. What are the difference between these two? Right. Oceans are large water bodies. Large water bodies filled with salt water. නැත්තම් saline water. Seas a water body of salt. එයාගේ salt මයි තියෙන්නේ. A water body of salt partially or partly or completely surrounded by land. Surrounded by land. Right? Partly or completely surrounded by land. මෙතන. මේක fill with short large water bodies. මේක පොඩි ඒවා. මේක ලොකු ඒවා. So 71% of the surface of the earth is covered by oceans. There are 5 oceans in the world. හරි? Oceans 5යි. දන්නවනේ? Pacific, Atlantic, Atlantic, Indian, Southern, Arctic. Right? This is the biggest one, biggest ocean. So, the ocean according to their magnitude, there are deep trenches located in the certain ocean. Mariana Trench, Mindanao Trench, හරි ට්‍රෙන්ච් ආගාධ ට්‍රෙන්ච් කියන්නේ ආගාධ ඒවා ඔක්කොම තියෙන්නේ පුතේ මේකේ තමයි තියෙන්නේ මරියානා ට්‍රෙන්ච් එකයි located in the Pacific Ocean, right? Mariana Trench and Mindanao. Mindanao, sorry. Our trenches are located in there. If we discuss these, Pute, we can divide these basically into three parts. The first part is completely surrounded by land. Completely surrounded by land. සම්පූර්ණයෙන්ම මුහුදෙන් වටවුණු මුහුදවල් තියෙනවා. මොනවාද? Caspian and Aral. Caspian Sea, Aral Sea. Right? And some are located partly enclosed. කොටසයි වැදිලා තියෙන්නේ. මම පෙන්නන්න. Partly enclosed by land. කොටසයි භූමියට තියෙන්නේ. What are they? Red Sea ගොඩක් තියෙනවානේ. පොතේ තියෙන්නේ Red Sea, Yellow Sea මම දෙකක් විතරක් තියෙනවා. You can follow the book. And third, seas with ocean. මුහුද seas with ocean. Ocean එකේම තියෙනවා. හොයන්න බෑ අපිට. හරි? Ocean එකට join වෙලා තියෙන අපිට හොයන්න බෑ. What are they? Arabian Sea. හරි? Arabian Sea, China Sea. There are three kinds of seas can be seen in the world. Completely surrounded by land. Actually, that seas are located within the land. Aral Sea, Caspian Sea. Partly enclosed by land. කොටසයි land එකෙන් වැහිලා තියෙන්නේ. Red Sea, Yellow Sea. Seas with ocean. Sea එක ගිහින් ocean එකත් එක්ක ඉන්නවා. Separately we can't see it, but we identify Arabian Sea and China Sea. පුතේ කොපි කරගන්න මේ නෝට් එක. ඊට පස්සේ මට තියෙනවා වීඩියෝ එක. ජොයින් වෙන්න බැරි ටැබ් එක මේ. ටැබ් එකේ බැටරි නෑ නේද? එහා ටැබ් එකේ බැටරි නෑනේ. ඒකත් බැලුවා ඕකත් දැක්සම දෙකම කරන්න බෑ නේද එහා. I'll give another 2 minutes. All need to finish within 2 minutes. Right, මම short note එකක් දාලා තියෙන්නේ පුතේ. මේක ඉවර කරන්න පුළුවන් ඉක්මනට. Okay, one more. 1 minute more. Hari. Good. So I won't go for the video. From there you will study that what are the oceans and seas. Right, I'll show you the difference between the ocean and seas.
What is the difference between oceans and seas? The word oceans implies the large water bodies of the world, namely the Pacific, Atlantic, Indian, and Arctic, as well as the Antarctic oceans where we find icebergs. Smaller seas are separated from the oceans by island chains or underwater ridges, which are called bordering seas. These include the North Sea, the Baltic Sea, the Mediterranean Sea, and the Caribbean Sea. The bordering seas in the oceans have some common features. Both contain salty water and rest on seabeds, but there are also differences in the variety of plants and animals living in them, and the storm tides, the tides that lash the coast of the North Sea, are hardly found along the Pacific coast. What does the seabed look like? The seabed is that area of the Earth which has been researched the least. However, we know, through sound wave technology, that there are deep valleys, high mountain ranges, steep slopes, and flat regions on the seabed. We also know that the seabed undergoes continuous changes. Underwater volcanic mountain ridges form at place, where two tectonic plates move away from each other, and these ridges grow every year by a few centimeters. Generally, the bed of the flat seas, such as the coral reefs, is densely populated with plants and animals. In contrast, the deeper regions in the seabed are often covered by a layer of sand, dust, and dead organisms from the rivers, which is several hundred meters thick. How are waves formed? Waves are formed as a result of the constant friction between water and wind. If the wind is blowing over the water surface, it carries away particles of water with it. The water starts moving in this way. Therefore, the distance between the wave crests is determined by the wind. A constant wind gives rise to long, soft waves, which are also known as groundswell. A high wind, on the other hand, causes small and strong waves, the typical motion of the sea. Unlike the tsunamis, these waves occur only at the surface of the water. At a depth of a few meters, the waves do not create any disturbance. How is salt formed in the sea? When rain falls on the ground and seeps below it, it washes away substances from the soil and rocks. It carries these substances into the river and the sea. You can read the names of these substances on the label of a bottle of mineral water. River water contains only a little salt, about 1 gram per liter, whereas the salt content of the sea is much higher, about 35 gram per liter on an average. The reason is that the salt remains in the sea. Although the rivers continue to deposit new salts, the seas do not become over salty because animals and plants in the sea absorb the salts in their bodies. When they die, they sink to the seabed and decompose into sediment.
The difference between oceans, seas, and bays. Oceans are huge bodies of salt water that are connected to other oceans. They often separate continents, for example, the Pacific Ocean or the Indian Ocean. Seas are smaller bodies of salt water that are usually surrounded by land on at least 3 sides, for example, the Mediterranean Sea or the Caribbean Sea. Bays. The bays are smaller compared to oceans and seas. They are found along coastlines and are partially surrounded by land. They are often shaped like a semicircle or a curve and are usually not very deep. Bays have salty water because they are connected to the ocean. For example, the Bay of Bengal or Tokyo Bay. The Bay of Bengal is known for its warm waters, diverse marine life, and play important role in the region's economy and culture. Tokyo Bay. Tokyo Bay in Japan is surrounded by cities like Tokyo, Yokohama, and Chiba. It's a hub for shipping, fishing, and recreational activities. Oceans are huge bodies of salt water that are connected to other oceans. Seas are smaller bodies of salt water that are usually surrounded by land on at least 3 sides. Bays. The bays are smaller compared to oceans and seas. They are often shaped like a semicircle or a curve and are usually not very deep.
Okay,
Right, Pute. So our time is finished. Don't forget to bring the world map. අපි ඊළඟ දවසේ සීට්ස් ටික මාක් කරලා ඕෂන් ටික මාක් කරලා එතන ඇක්ටිවිටි එක ඉවර කරලා mountains වලට යන්න ඕනේ. Bring 2 3 world maps. Till then, have a nice day, nice week. Bye bye. Bye, all.
Bye, teacher.
Bye,
Thank
Patrick.
you, teacher.
Bye, welcome.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.